The room was so quiet that I could hear the hum of the air conditioner and the ticking of the clock on the wall. Usually an ultrasound is the happiest moment of your life. You expect to hear a heartbeat, to see a tiny shape that represents your future. But when Dr. Evans turned off the monitor, he didn't smile. He didn't hand me a printout. He looked me dead in the eye, his face pale, and whispered something that froze the blood in my vein. He didn't congratulate me. Instead, he leaned in close and whispered, "You need to leave this building and you need to leave your husband right now." But why? Why would the doctor say something so strange? My husband, the man I trusted blindly. What conspiracy was he actually plotting behind my back? What horrifying truth did the doctor spot in a simple ultrasound report that completely shattered my perfect family? And in the end, what was the fate of me and my unborn baby? To get the answers to all these questions, please watch the video until the very end, because knowing the truth will send shivers down your spine. I am Sneha, and I'm here with you today. So, without further delay, let's dive into the full details of this chilling true story. I was 32 years old, and if you looked at my life from the outside, you would have thought I had hit the jackpot. My name is Elena, and my world revolved around one person, my husband, Mark. You know those couples you see walking down the street who just seem in sync? The ones who finish each other's sentences and look at each other like they're the only two people in the world. That was us. We met 5 years ago in a tiny crowded coffee shop in downtown Seattle. It was raining, classic Seattle weather, and I was rushing to a meeting completely frazzled. I turned a corner too fast and crashed right into a tall, broad-shouldered man, sending my iced latte flying all over his pristine white shirt. I was mortified. I expected him to yell, to be angry. Instead, he just laughed, a deep, warm laugh that instantly made me forget about the rain. He grabbed a handful of napkins, not to wipe his shirt, but to help me clean my jacket. "It's just coffee," he had said, looking right into my eyes with a smile that could melt snow. "But you look like you've had a rough morning. Let me buy you a replacement." From that spilled coffee came a love story that felt like a fairy tale. Mark was an architect, brilliant, creative, and steady. He was always building things, always planning. He designed our house himself. It was a beautiful place with big windows to let the light in, a wraparound porch, and a garden he insisted on planting himself. He told me he wanted to build a fortress for us, a place where nothing bad could ever touch me. And for a long time, nothing did. But like many couples who seem perfect on paper, we had a shadow hanging over us. We wanted a baby more than anything in the world. For 3 long, agonising years, we tried. Every month was a cycle of hope and heartbreak. I can't tell you how many times I sat on the cold bathroom floor, staring at a pregnancy test with a single pink line, tears streaming down my face. I felt broken. I felt like I was failing him. But Mark, he was a rock. He never got frustrated. He never blamed me. On the nights when I would cry myself to sleep, he would hold me tight, stroking my hair, whispering, "We are enough, Elena. You and me, we are a family, no matter what." He took charge of everything to help us conceive. He became obsessed with health. If we want a miracle, he'd say, we have to prepare the temple. He threw out all the processed food in the pantry. He started cooking organic, clean meals from scratch. He researched supplements, vitamins, and ancient herbal remedies. That's when the smoothies started. Every single morning, without fail, Mark would wake up 20 minutes before me. By the time I walked into the kitchen, the blender would be whirring. He called it his miracle blend. It was a thick green concoction that smelled earthy and slightly bitter. "Drink up," he would say, pouring it into a tall glass and setting it in front of me with a hopeful smile. "It's packed with antioxidants and fertility boosters. I read about this blend in a medical journal. It's going to help us, Elle. I can feel it." Honestly, it tasted awful. It was metallic and bitter, leaving a strange aftertaste on my tongue, but I drank it, every drop, because I saw how much effort he was putting in. I saw the desperation in his eyes to be a father. He would stand there, leaning against the counter, watching me take every sip like a proud coach. When I finished, he would always kiss my forehead, grab his keys and say, "Have a good day, beautiful. I love you." And it worked. 3 months ago on a Tuesday morning, I didn't see one line. I saw two. I remember screaming. I ran into the living room where Mark was sketching blueprints. And when I showed him the test, he didn't just smile. He dropped his pencil, fell to his knees and wrapped his arms around my waist, burying his face in my stomach. He sobbed, great heaving sobs of joy. "We did it," he whispered. "We finally did it." It was the happiest moment of my life, but that happiness didn't last long. Almost immediately, the pregnancy got hard, and I don't mean just morning sickness hard. I mean, I felt like the life was being drained out of me. By the 6th week, I could barely stand up without the room spinning. I was constantly nauseous, but it wasn't just throwing up. It was a deep, aching sickness in my bone. My skin, which used to be rosy and healthy, started turning a dull, grey colour. My hair started thinning. I was exhausted, not just tired, but the kind of exhaustion where lifting your arm feels like lifting 100 pounds. I complained to my mum, to my friends. They all waved it off. "Oh, honey, that's just pregnancy," they'd say. "Some women have it harder than others. It means the baby is strong." And Mark was a saint. He didn't complain about my sickness. Instead, he doubled down on his care. "You're weak because the baby is taking everything," he explained, his voice full of concern. "We need to up the nutrients." He started adding more powders to the morning smoothie. "Just a little extra iron," he'd say. "Some more herbs for brain development, only the best for my family." He was so attentive. If I didn't finish the smoothie because I felt too sick, he would get genuinely upset. Not angry, but worried. "Elena, please," he would plead, sitting next to me on the sofa, holding the glass to my lips. "You have to drink it for the baby. Do you want our baby to be healthy?" So I drank it. I choked it down, fighting the urge to vomit because I trusted him. He was my husband. He was the architect building our future. Why would I ever doubt the man who cried tears of joy at the news of this child? By the time the 20-week ultrasound arrived, I was a shell of myself. I remember looking in the hallway mirror before we left for the clinic. I barely recognised the woman staring back. My eyes were sunken into dark hollows. My cheekbones were sharp. My hands had a constant, subtle tremor. "You look beautiful," Mark said, coming up behind me and wrapping his arms around my shoulders. He kissed my cheek. "You look like a glowing mother." I forced a smile, but I felt like I was dying. Mark drove us to the clinic. He was in high spirits, humming along to the radio, talking about the nursery paint colours. "I'm thinking a soft yellow," he said, tapping the steering wheel. "And I ordered that crib, the hand-carved one. It's expensive, but safety is the priority, right?" I just nodded, leaning my head against the cool window, trying to focus on breathing. When we got to Dr. Evans' office, the waiting room was packed. It was loud, phones ringing, kids playing, the TV blaring news in the corner. Mark was his usual charming self. He chatted with the receptionist, charmed the nurses, and even made a joke that had an elderly couple laughing. Everyone looked at him and then at me, probably thinking, wow, she's lucky to have a guy like that. I felt lucky. Even through the sickness, I felt lucky. "Elena Davis," the nurse called out. Mark jumped up faster than I did. He offered me his arm, helping me walk like I was fragile porcelain. We went into the dim ultrasound room. It was warm and smelled sanitised. "Okay, Mum and Dad, let's see this little one," the technician said cheerfully. She squirted the warm gel onto my belly. As soon as the wand touched my skin, the screen flickered to life in black and grey. There it was, our baby. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Tears pricked my eyes. Despite how awful I felt seeing that tiny spine, the little legs kicking, it made everything worth it. "Heartbeat is strong," the technician said, typing something on her keyboard. "Thump, thump, thump, thump." It was the most beautiful sound in the world. But then the room got quiet. The technician stopped typing. She moved the wand back and forth over one spot, frowning slightly. She squinted at the screen. Then she moved the wand away from the baby, sliding it up towards my rib, scanning my liver and my kidney. "Is everything okay?" Mark asked from the chair beside me, squeezing my hand. "Is the baby okay?" The technician forced a smile, but it didn't reach her eye. "The baby looks active, but I just need to get Dr. Evans to take a look at a few measurements. It's standard procedure. Don't worry." She left the room quickly, too quickly. A heavy silence settled over us. Mark kept patting my hand. "It's fine, Elle. Probably just double checking the due date." 10 minutes passed, then 15. When the door finally opened, Dr. Evans walked in. I had known Dr. Evans for years, and he was a boisterous, happy man who usually walked in with a loud hello and a big grin. Today he was silent. He didn't smile smile. He didn't even look at Mark. He walked straight to the machine, his face pale and tight. He picked up the transducer and placed it back on my belly. He didn't look at the baby. He went straight to the edges of the uterus, then up to my organs again. He pressed hard, his eyes scanning the monitor with an intensity that scared me. I saw a bead of sweat roll down the side of his temple. "Dr. Evans?" I whispered, my voice trembling. "What is it?" He ignored me for a second, typing furiously into the machine. Then he stopped. He took a deep breath, turned off the monitor and turned to face us, but he wasn't looking at me. He was looking at Mark. "Mr. Davis," Dr. Evans said, his voice strangely flat, "there is an issue with your insurance authorization. It seems the policy number on file has been flagged. The front desk needs you to sign a waiver immediately or we cannot process today's images." Mark frowned. "Now? Can't it wait until we're done? We're in the middle of the exam." "I'm afraid not," Dr. Evans said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "The system will lock us out in 2 minutes. The nurse is holding the file for you at the front desk. It will only take a moment." Mark looked annoyed. He looked at me, then at the doctor. "Fine," he huffed, standing up. He squeezed my shoulder. "I'll be right back, babe. Don't let him tell you the gender without me." He walked out of the room. The moment the heavy door clicked shut, the atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. It was like the air was sucked out. Dr. Evans didn't wait. He moved with the speed that started. He practically lunged for the door and turned the lock. Click! My heart hammered against my ribs. "Doctor, what are you doing? Is something wrong with the baby's heart?" Dr. Evans turned back to me. He was trembling. I had never seen a doctor look terrified before. He walked over to the bed and leaned in close, so close I could smell the coffee on his breath. He grabbed my wrist, his grip tight and urgent. "Elena," he whispered, his voice shaking. "Listen to me very carefully. Do not scream. Do not panic." "What is it?" I choked out, tears spilling over. "Is my baby dead?" "The baby is alive," he said, his eyes boring into mine. "But you..." "Elena, I was looking at the calcification on your placenta and I saw the stress markers on your liver. I've only seen this pattern once before in my entire career 20 years ago." "I don't understand," I cried. "My liver? What does that have to do with..." "It's not pregnancy sickness, Elena." He cut me off, his voice a harsh hiss. "You aren't sick, you are being poisoned." The world stopped. The ticking clock on the wall seemed to vanish. "Poison?" I whispered. "That's impossible. I only eat organic. I only drink..." My voice trailed off. "The smoothie, the thick, green, bitter smoothie, the one Mark made every morning, the one he watched me drink." Dr. Evans saw the realisation hit my face. He squeezed my wrist harder. "I don't know what he's giving you, but the levels of toxicity in your blood flow are sky high. If you go home with that man today, you will not wake up next week, and neither will your baby." He leaned in even closer, his voice dropping to a terrifying whisper that chilled me to the bone. "The doctor saw your ultrasound, Elena, I am begging you. You need to leave this building and you need to leave your husband right now. He is trying to kill you." I stared at him, my mouth open, unable to breathe. My Mark, my hero, the man who built me a house and rubbed my feet. Suddenly the doorknob jiggled. Someone was trying to get in. "Elena." "Doctor." Mark's voice came from the other side of the door. It sounded muffled but impatient. "Why is the door locked?" Dr. Evans' eyes went wide. He looked at the door, then back at me. The fear in his eyes was real. This wasn't a medical diagnosis anymore. This was a crime scene. And I was trapped in the room with the only man who knew the truth, while the man who wanted me dead was turning the handle, demanding to be let in. The doorknob rattled again, harder this time. "Yeah, Elena, is everything okay in there?" Mark's voice was no longer just impatient. There was an edge to it now, a sharp, controlling tone that I'd heard 1,000 times before, but never truly listened to until now. My heart was pounding so hard against my ribs I thought it would crack them open. I looked at Dr. Evans, my eyes wide with panic. I was half naked on an exam table covered in ultrasound gel, and my husband, the man who had been slowly poisoning me for months, was standing just inches away, separated only by a thin wooden door. Dr. Evans didn't freeze. He moved with the precision of a soldier. He let go of my wrist and pointed a finger at me, mouthing the words, "Play along." He took a deep breath, smoothed his white coat and unlocked the door. He opened it just as Mark was about to knock again. Mark stumbled forward slightly, his face flushed. For a split second, just a heartbeat, I saw it. The mask had slipped. His eyes weren't warm and loving. They were cold, calculating and annoyed. He looked past the doctor, straight at me, checking to see if I was still compliant, still his clueless victim. "Why was the door locked?" Mark demanded, his voice tight. He stepped into the room, reclaiming his territory. The receptionist said there was no issue with the insurance. She looked at me like I was crazy. Dr. Evans stepped between Mark and me. He was shorter than Mark, but in that moment, he looked like a giant. "My apologies, Mr. Davis," Dr. Evans said smoothly. His voice was calm, professional, completely masking the terror he had just shared with me. "We had a bit of a glitch with the machine, but that's not the main concern right now." Mark frowned. "What is the concern?" "Elena's blood pressure," Dr. Evans lied effortlessly. "It just spiked dangerously high. We call it a pre-eclamptic surge. It's rare this early, but it's life-threatening. If we don't get her on an IV drip immediately, she could have a seizure and we could lose the baby." I watched Mark's face. I watched the man I loved, the man I slept next to every night, process this information. A normal husband would be terrified. A normal husband would grab my hand, ask what hospital we were going to, ask how he could help. Mark didn't look terrified. He looked relieved. A tiny, almost imperceptible smile tugged at the corner of his mouth before he quickly wiped it away. "Oh no," he said, his voice dripping with fake concern. "That sounds terrible. Well, let's get her home. I can set her up in bed. I'll make sure she rests." "Absolutely not," Dr. Evans cut in firmly. "She needs hospital monitoring, cardiac monitoring. I've already called for transport. An ambulance is 5 minutes out." Mark's head snapped up. "An ambulance? That's ridiculous. I'm parked right outside. I can drive her. It'll be faster." "It's a liability issue, sir," Dr. Evans said, crossing his arms. "If she has a seizure in your car, you won't be able to help her. She goes by ambulance. It's not a request." The air in the room was electric. Mark stared at the doctor, his jaw clenching. He was losing control and he hated it. He looked at me. "Elena, baby, tell him. You want me to drive you, right? You don't want to go in a scary ambulance alone." He reached for my hand. Usually his touch was my comfort. Now looking at his hand reaching for mine, all I could think about was that same hand pouring green powder into a blender. That same hand stroking my hair while I drank poison. I wanted to scream. I wanted to vomit, but I remembered Dr. Evans' eyes play along. I forced myself to look at him with tired, heavy eyes. "Mark," I whispered, my voice weak, "I feel really dizzy, maybe." Maybe the doctor is right. Mark stopped. He looked at me, searching my face for any sign that I knew. But I played the part of the sick, exhausted wife perfectly because I was sick. I was dying. "Fine," Mark snapped, pulling his hand back. "Fine, I'll follow the ambulance." The next 10 minutes were a blur of chaos. Paramedics rushed in with a stretcher. They loaded me up, strapping me down. "Doctor," Evans leaned over me as they were wheeling me out, pretending to check my pulse. "I slipped a note to the driver," he whispered so quietly only I could hear. "The police will meet you at the hospital. Don't look at Mark. Just close your eye." I closed my eyes. As they wheeled me through the waiting room, I heard Mark's voice. He was on his phone. He wasn't calling my parents. He wasn't calling his parents. "Yeah, it's happening now," I heard him say, his voice low and cold. "She's going to the hospital. No, I don't know how long she has. It looks bad. Get the paperwork ready." A chill went through my entire body that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. He was calling the insurance company. He was preparing to cash in on my death before I was even dead. The ambulance ride was lonely, terrifying. I lay there listening to siren, tears sliding silently down my temples into my ears. I touched my belly. "We have to survive," I told my baby. "We have to make it." When we arrived at the hospital, they didn't take me to the regular ER. They bypassed the triage desk and wheeled me straight into a private room in the back. 2 police officers were already there. One was a tall, stern-looking man. The other was a woman with kind eyes, Detective Miller. She walked over to the bed immediately. "Mrs. Davis," she said gently, "Dr. Evans called us. He sent over the digital scans and your blood work from the clinic. We need to act fast." "Is he here?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Is Mark here?" "He's in the waiting room," the male officer said. "We have him contained. He thinks you're in surgery, but right now we need you to tell us everything, every detail." So I did. Lying in that hospital bed, hooked up to monitors that beeped with the rhythm of my racing heart, I told them about the last 5 years. I told them about the miracle blend. I told them how Mark insisted on making it himself and how he would get angry if I didn't drink it, how he isolated me from my friends friends saying we needed us time to focus on the baby. While I was talking, a nurse came in with a toxicology report. She handed it to Detective Miller. The detective's face went hard. She looked at the paper, then at me. Elena, she said softly, the lab found traces of foxglove and oleander in your system. These are highly toxic plants and there are heavy metals, lead and arsenic. The levels are high. Dr. Evans wasn't exaggerating. Another week of those smoothies. She paused, taking a breath. Another week and your heart would have just stopped. I covered my mouth to stifle a sob. He was killing us, I wept. He was killing his own child. We need to check your house, Detective Miller said. We need your permission to enter and search for the source. I signed the paper with a shaking hand. For the next 2 hours, I lay in that bed, receiving treatment to flush the toxins from my blood. It was painful. I felt like my veins were burning, but the emotional pain was worse. Every happy memory I had of Mark, our wedding, the day we bought the house, the way he held me, it was all twisting into something dark and ugly. It was all a lie. Then the detective's phone rang. She answered it, listened for a minute, and then looked at me. Her expression was grim. They found it, she said. Found what? They found a hidden garden behind your tool shed. Mark was growing the foxglove himself, and inside his home office, they found his laptop open. She walked over and sat on the edge of my bed. Elena, Mark wasn't an architect anymore. He was fired 6 months ago. His firm caught him embezzling funds. He's been unemployed and hiding it from you every day. Fired. I stared at her. But he goes to work every morning. He goes to a coffee shop and uses the free Wi-Fi to gamble online, she explained. He is in massive debt. Gambling debt, loan sharks. He owes hundreds of thousands of dollars. The pieces of the puzzle started slamming together in my mind. The stress, the need for control. And 3 months ago, the detective continued, her voice gentle but firm. Right around the time you conceived, Mark took out a life insurance policy on you. A specialised policy. It pays out triple indemnity if the death is accidental or caused by sudden medical complications during pregnancy. Triple indemnity. He didn't want a family. He didn't want a baby. He wanted a paycheck. The miracle blend wasn't to help us conceive. It was to make sure that once I did conceive, I wouldn't survive it. The tears he cried when I showed him the positive test, they weren't joy, they were relief. His plan was finally in motion. I felt a cold rage building inside me. It replaced the fear, it replaced the sadness. This man, this monster, had looked into my eyes every morning, kissed my forehead and handed me a glass of death, all so he could pay off his gambling debt. Is he still in the waiting room? I asked. My voice sounded different now, stronger. Yes, the officer said. He's pacing, asking why it's taking so long. He's putting on quite a show of the grieving husband. I want him arrested, I said, gripping the bedsheets. I want him to know that I know. Detective Miller nodded. We have enough for an arrest now. The plants, search history, the toxicology. We're going to take him into custody. Suddenly there was a commotion in the hallway, shouting, "You can't keep me out here. It was Mark. She's my wife. I have a right to see her. Is she dead? Tell me if she's dead." He wasn't asking out of grief. He was asking to see if he had won. The door to my room flew open. A nurse tried to stop him, but Mark shoved past her. He burst into the room, his hair dishevelled, his eyes wild. He stopped when he saw me. I was sitting up. I wasn't dead. I wasn't having a seizure. I was staring right at him, my eyes burning with hate. And behind him, the 2 police officers stepped out from the corners of the room. And Mark looked at me, then at the cops, then back at me. The colour drained from his face. For the first time in our marriage, I saw the real Mark, not the charming architect, not the loving husband, but a small, pathetic, terrified man who had been caught. "Elena?" he stammered, taking a step back. "Baby, what's going on? Why are the police here?" I looked him dead in the eye. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just spoke the truth that Dr. Evans had saved me with. "The doctor saw the ultrasound, Mark," I said coldly. "He saw the poison. He saw what you did." Mark opened his mouth to lie, to spin another story, but Detective Miller was already moving. "Mark Davis," she announced, her voice ringing through the room. "You are under arrest for the attempted murder of Elena Davis and her unborn child, and for insurance fraud." As the handcuffs clicked around his wrists, Mark started screaming. "He didn't scream that he loved me. He didn't scream that it was a mistake." He screamed, "You can't prove it. It was just herbal tea. She's crazy. She's hormonal." They dragged him out of the room, kicking and yelling. I watched him go. I watched the man I had planned to grow old with being hauled away like the criminal he was. When the door finally closed, silence returned to the room. But this time, it wasn't the silence of fear, it was the silence of survival. I placed my hand on my belly. I felt a tiny flutter, a kick. We made it, I whispered. He didn't win. But as I lay back against the pillows, the adrenaline fading, the reality of what lay ahead crashed down on me. I was alone. I was pregnant. My husband was a monster, and I had to figure out how to rebuild a life from the ashes of the one he had tried to burn down. The silence that followed Mark's arrest was heavier than anything I had ever felt. The door had closed, the shouting had faded, and suddenly it was just me and the steady rhythmic beep of the heart monitor. Beep, beep. Beep! That sound, which had been annoying just an hour ago, was now the most beautiful symphony in the world. It was proof that I was still here, proof that my baby was still here. I spent the next 2 weeks in that hospital bed. Physically, it was a battle. The doctors had to aggressively flush the toxins from my system. I was weak, constantly shivering, and my skin felt like paper. I had nightmares every time I closed my eyes, dreams where Mark was standing over me with that green smoothie, smiling his charming smile while the glass filled with snake instead of liquid. I would wake up screaming, drenched in sweat, reaching for a husband who was now sitting in a cold jail cell. But the emotional recovery, that was harder than any physical pain. Lying there staring at the sterile white ceiling, I had to mourn a man who was still alive. I had to mourn the death of the life I thought I had. I replayed every memory of the last 5 years. Was any of it real? Did he ever love me? Or was I just a Mark from the very beginning? A naive woman with a good credit score and a trusting heart. My parents flew in the next morning, seeing my dad, a tough, stoic man who never showed emotion, break down and weep when he saw me hooked up to those machines. That broke me. My mum didn't say a word. She just climbed into the hospital bed with me, held me like I was a little girl again, and let me cry until I had no tears left. But amidst the pain, there was a spark, a tiny, fierce spark that kept growing. It happened during one of the routine ultrasounds in the hospital. Dr. Evans came to visit me. He wasn't my doctor at this hospital, but he checked in every day. He walked in looking tired but relieved. "How is she?" he asked the technician. "She's a fighter," the technician smiled, turning the screen towards me. And there she was, my baby. Despite the poison, despite the stress, despite the chaos, her heart was beating strong and steady. She was kicking, moving, living. Dr. Evans took my hand. "Elena," softly, "you saved her by listening to me, by being brave enough to walk out of that room. You saved her life." I looked at the screen, at that tiny blurry shape, and I realised something profound. Mark had tried to destroy me. He had tried to write the end of my story, but he failed. This wasn't the end. This was just a very painful, very messy new beginning. From that moment on, I stopped being a victim. I started being a mother. I filed for divorce from my hospital bed. My lawyer, a shark of a woman named Sarah, handled everything. When she told me about Mark's reaction to the divorce papers, I felt nothing but cold indifference. Apparently, he was still trying to play the innocent victim, blaming herbal supplements and claiming he was just trying to help me. But the evidence was insurmountable. The search history on his laptop, undetectable poisons, how to induce heart failure, was a nail in his coffin. I moved back in with my parents after I was discharged. It was humbling to be 32 and living in my childhood bedroom, but it was safe, and safety was all I craved. The months passed. My strength returned slowly. The grey left my skin. My hair started to shine again, and my belly grew round and heavy. I spent my days walking in my parents' garden, talking to my baby. "We're going to be okay," I would whisper to her. "It's just us now, but we are going to be so happy." And then on a rainy Tuesday in April, exactly 5 years to the day I met Mark, my water broke. The labour was long and exhausting, but I wasn't afraid. I had faced death. I could handle birth. My mum was by my side, wiping my forehead, and Dr. Evans, who had promised to deliver her person, was there guiding me. When I finally heard that first cry, a loud, indignant wail that filled the room, I felt my heart shatter and rebuild itself all at once. They placed her on my chest. She was warm, slippery, and perfect. She had a mop of dark hair and eyes that opened wide, staring up at me with an intensity that took breath away. I named her Lily, not because it was a pretty name, but because lilies are resilient. They grow in the valleys, they survive the harshest winters, and they bloom fiercely when the sun returns. She was my Lily, my bloom after the storm. Holding her, I realised that Mark had taken a lot from me. He took my trust, he took my financial security, he took my belief in fairy tales, but he couldn't take this. He couldn't take the love I felt for this child. That was mine, untouchable. Mark's trial happened 6 months later. I didn't want to go, but I knew I had to. I needed to see him one last time. I needed him to see me, not as the weak, sick wife he tried to kill, but as the strong, healthy mother who survived him. I walked into that courtroom wearing a bright red dress. I stood tall. When I took the stand and told my story, I didn't stutter. I looked him right in the eye. He looked small, huddled in his orange jumpsuit, unable to meet my gaze. The jury didn't take long. Guilty on all counts: attempted murder, insurance fraud, embezzlement. The judge sentenced him to 20 years in prison. When the gavel banged down, I didn't cheer. I just let out a long, slow breath. It was over. The ghost that had been haunting my life was finally locked away. As I walked out of the courthouse, the sun was shining. Reporters were there, cameras flashing, asking for a statement. I stopped for a moment, holding Lily close to my chest in her carrier. "Mrs. Davis," a reporter shouted, "do you have anything to say to women who might be in your shoes?" I looked into the camera, thinking of the woman I was a year ago, scared, sick, and trusting a monster. "Trust your gut," I said, my voice clear and steady. "Trust your body. And if someone tells you to run, don't ask questions, just run." We think evil looks like a monster, but sometimes it looks like the person you love most. Don't be afraid to save yourself. That was 3 years ago. Life looks different now. I'm not rich. I'm a single mum working as a freelance graphic designer. We live in a small apartment with a tiny balcony where I grow, you guessed it, lilies. But my life is full. It's full of laughter. It's full of chaotic mornings getting Lily ready for preschool. It's full of Saturday morning cartoons and sticky pancake breakfast. I haven't dated anyone since Mark. I'm not ready yet, and maybe I won't be for a long time, and that's okay. I learned that I don't need a man to complete my puzzle. I am the puzzle, and Lily is the most beautiful piece of it. Sometimes when I'm making a smoothie for breakfast, yes, I still drink smoothies, but I make them myself now with fresh fruit and 0 secret powders. I think about Dr. Evans. I think about that split-second decision he made to lock the door. He saved 2 lives that day. I still send him a Christmas card every year with a picture of Lily. He always writes back, "She looks just like her mother, strong." If you are listening to this story and you feel a chill down your spine, don't brush it off. We are taught to be polite. We are taught to be good wives or good partners. We are taught not to make a scene, but I'm telling you, make the scene. If something feels wrong, if your partner controls what you eat, who you see, or where you go, that is not love. That is ownership, and you are not property. My name is Elena. I was poisoned by the man who promised to protect me. I was minutes away from death. But today I am alive. I am happy and I am free because the doctor saw my ultrasound and begged me to get a divorce. And thank God I listened. End of story. Outro by Sneha. Wow, what an incredible journey of survival and strength. Elena's story is a terrifying reminder that we never truly know what is happening behind closed doors, but it is also a beautiful testament to the power of a mother's love and the intuition of those who care for us. I hope this story touched your heart as much as it touched mine. It takes immense courage to rebuild your life after such a betrayal, and Elena is a true warrior. This has been Voice of Sneha. My goal is to bring you stories that matter, stories that make you feel, and stories that open your eyes to the hidden realities of our world. If you felt the emotion in this video, if you were on the edge of your seat, please show your support by hitting that like button. It really helps the channel grow and reach more people who might need to hear this message. And if you want to be part of our family and hear more gripping, emotional and true life stories like this one, please subscribe to my channel, Voice of Sneha. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Always trust your instincts. Take care of yourselves and remember, you are stronger than you think. Until next time, stay safe and keep listening. Bye for now.